Hello, welcome everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining me on this presentation where we have a look at the very nature of suffering, why change is so difficult, and why people are hardly ever present. So it's an overview of the mind. We're looking at mindfulness, cause and effect. And I've called this particular journey around the mind, Finding Now. So let's look at the content we're going over this evening. If you're looking at a time frame, I would estimate that this will be around an hour, give or take, but it will certainly be worth your time. And for many of you, probably give you a huge amount of clarity onto why you've got what you've got in life in terms of suffering, resistance to change, and a head that is very busy spinning around and around. So we're going to look at your nervous system and the fact that it doesn't care if you're healthy or happy. It's got a very, very simple objective, and it's relentless with this. Also, there's a powerful negativity bias that ties in very closely with what your nervous system is wired for. This leads to change being met with huge resistance. We create a comfort zone. Anything challenging, any risks are usually avoided through fear. Thoughts are powerful and destructive. They can also be a fantastic thing as long as you are aware of the consequences of thoughts and where they go. Because there's a choice where they lead to action, but they can also lead to inaction, where we end up the veritable pinball in the machine, thinking and worrying about consequences. So what actually happens is we stay put and do nothing. Because of the negativity bias, by default, we see what is wrong. We rapidly scan and survey our environment, checking if all is well. And if there are no problems, we are at ease and can continue. And for this reason, we miss a lot of what is out there. Language can impact what you do, tying in with thoughts and the power of words. And we'll look a little bit into the placebo and the nocebo effect here to give you some of the research that underpins this. Being an expert is revered in many, many areas, but it's also extremely dangerous, and I would even add fatal. And you'll see why when we look at skill acquisition and competency. Most of our beliefs cause suffering because they're not yours, they come from other people. What you think is treated as real, coming back to steps 1, 2, and 3, because of what your nervous system is hardwired for and the negativity bias. 99% of the fear that you experience is an absolute illusion, and you'll see why. And we're going to teach you to focus on what you do want, because people become experts at getting angry at what they have, desperate to get rid of it, and indirectly empowering it. Therefore, it never disappears. And also being mindfully present and aware of this moment. So the goal of this is to give you a slow trip around the mind, to highlight the specific reasons that people suffer, why change is so difficult, and also how to begin walking that path of awareness, inner peace, and independence. So, your brain has no interest in health, as I mentioned. It also has no interest in happiness. In fact, it has one primary objective, and it is militant with this. And it's done it for absolutely thousands and thousands of years based on evolution, anthropology. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today looking at our screens. And that job is survival. It is exceptionally good at looking for what is wrong and preempting what it will do based on now being subject to threat, serious injury, or death. And for this reason, many people have, if you will, a low level of anxiety throughout the day, because this element of the reptilian brain is still present. You could be sitting with your favorite brew in a coffee shop in the middle of a busy shopping center, and your stomach's going around as it would if you are just about to walk into an exam or a job interview. There's this underlying nervousness, and we're not sure why, and we don't like it, and we're desperate to escape it. But it's important to understand that survival has got us to where we are today. It's an essential part. We miss a huge amount of what is out there in the world, in our immediate environment. The negativity bias rapidly learns about the world to keep us safe in it. And therefore, anything that causes pain creates a memory and a belief that resists all future exposure. They say once bitten, twice shy, or you don't burn your hand twice in the same oven. And this is how we learn over many, many, many years, from leaving the caves to becoming nomadic hunter-gatherers. When things were instant threat, massive danger, and could have led to a big loss of life, ours and others, we learned to avoid these situations. We formed groups, we made weapons. We were very cautious. And a great example of this is to watch The Croods, the Disney's kind of caveman version of The Incredibles, where they sleep in this rock, kind of cave, and Dad rolls a great big 10-ton rock over. And then as the cave everyone leaves in the morning, they tiptoe looking left to right, almost kind of like creeping away, if you will, because they never knew what the next step could lead to. Wild animals, threats from other tribes, rapid changes in terms of treacherous weather. Therefore, this element of threat, fear, and survival paid dividends long term. Change and resistance. Survival basically means the creation of a comfort zone with familiarity and minimal threats, guarded by an inner critic. When you have an idea of something that will elevate your life in a big way, your inner critic, the noise in your head, if you will, usually kicks in with every objection you could imagine and some extra ones, just to make sure that you really listen and understand that this isn't a thing that's in your best interests, because it's going to go wrong and fall over and cost money and hurt you and be a waste of time, and people will judge you and laugh at you. And all of a sudden, the distance between us and this goal that we actually really do want massively increases. So thoughts have power. Almost all suffering comes from thinking. If you have a pen and paper near you, or a document open, I would take a note of that. That is my entire work condensed into 6 words. Almost all suffering comes from thinking. Your brain makes no distinction between real, remembered, and vividly imagined. Horror movies scare people. We know that the people in the movie aren't real. They're actors, they're actresses. Yet it doesn't stop us clenching the pillow or the cushion and rising up the back of the sofa. And as the crunch moment appears and you ask yourself, why do you have to go into the basement? we kind of almost leave the chair, because we can empathize with us being in that situation. If ever you've been in a 4D or a 3D cinema and one of those things comes towards you very close, we move relative to it. Because if we didn't do it in a make-believe situation, we also may not do it in a real situation. So the brain treats as real whatever is seen or thought. And that's one of our biggest problems. By default, we go back to the past and dig up what was wrong, who hurt us, situations that we don't like and therefore do not accept, and the people that we still hold hot coals for and are unwilling to forgive. Therefore, our horror section. And the movie shop also has a fiction section. Future. Probability at best, a random spin on the roulette wheel. But instead of seeing future success, we see doubt, fear, failure. Us as not good enough, not being able to meet the task head on and be successful. And the big danger here is that the more times you play a movie of things going wrong, the more times you beat yourself up without ever stepping in the arena. So we get thrashed twice. We beat ourselves up, constantly thinking about a thing we want and never taking action. And the things that you never turn up to, you get a big fat 0. I'd rather see what I'm made of and get all the battle scars, but have actually been there. Because you're going to make mistakes. Edison got the bulb wrong 10,000 times before finding tungsten. Can you imagine if on day 3 he went, "This is not for me, I quit"? We won't always get the thing we are after on our first attempt, on our second attempt, on our 10th, 50th, or 100th attempt. But if you know deep down that this is your path and the result is at the end of this journey somewhere, then stick with it. And there's a very good quote by psychologist Carl Jung, who was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud. He said, "There is no problem in understanding what a thing is not, i.e. a false positive, because when I know what it isn't, I am instantly brought a step closer to understanding what it is." It's deduction. Think of the squidgy red ball under the plastic cups. There's 100 cups and someone has hidden the ball under one of them. Wouldn't it be silly if you turned over the first one, didn't get the ball, and quit thinking you're a failure? Because when you can zoom out and see it from the observer perspective, every cup you turn over that is a false positive increases your odds of success. Eventually, you will find the ball. Eventually, Edison found tungsten. And eventually, with the right effort, application, and set of skills, you will probably achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. So going back slightly, let's look at survival, the nature of fears, and how they can be instantly uploaded, downloaded, or your choice of words. I want you to consider one of the biggest fears that both I had and most of my clients that come to see me. And this one for many people is actually bigger than spiders. Public speaking. If you had 1,000 people in a room, at least 950 of them would have some fear of public speaking, especially if you said, "Would you like to talk to the other 999 people on a stage with a microphone?" All of a sudden, their heart would be doing cardio, there'd be a cold sweat, and they'd probably nearly pass out. We have to learn this fear because we're not born with it. We are born with a fear of loud noises and falling. And if you can learn something, you can also unlearn it. And that's the beauty of neuroplasticity in terms of skill acquisition, consistency. So most of our beliefs, as we'll look at a little bit later on, are concrete by around the age of 7, give or take. So for those of you listening, I'm sure there's been some episode in your childhood, be it in a small group, with a teacher, in a classroom, or the big one, in assembly, where you were talking to your friend and all of a sudden someone kind of called you out and asked you to stand up, and they were quite annoyed and they said, "Right, okay, what is it that cannot wait till lunchtime that you have to interrupt my presentation to the whole of school? In fact, I'm sure everyone's dying to know, so please tell us." So in that 10 seconds, you have gone from absolute rest in terms of homeostasis, completely chilled, to standing up and being called out in front of however many people are there. For some people, 10 is enough. If you've got 50 to 100 plus, very dangerous. And in that 10 seconds, all of a sudden, your base level physiology has gone from rest to a heart that's now doing cardio, cold sweats, the jitters, your pupils have dilated, the biochemistry is flooded, you've got adrenaline, cortisol, muscles are ready for action. Going back to our slide earlier, you're ready to defend your life with a spear or run like Usain Bolt. Saliva begins to dry up. You probably couldn't speak if you wanted to in terms of the mouth and the knots in the stomach, and you would like the floor to open up and swallow you. Now, your brain is always calculating and gathering outside information to maintain this homeostasis. So what do you think happens if in the click of a finger you go from absolute rest to a near-death experience panic attack? It surveys. It realizes where you are. It takes stock of what this situation consists of. You are in public and you have been asked to speak. Would it ever put you there again if, according to the feedback it's got, it nearly killed you? You are now in a state that's the equivalent of being face to face with a Bengal tiger. Absolute terror. So not only will it never allow you to do public speaking, it will even play memories of public speaking going wrong. You falling off. Should you even be silly enough to entertain the idea that I would really like to do public speaking, you'll fall off the stage. The PowerPoint will blow up. People will ask questions. There'll be a power cut. You'll slip. You'll mumble your words. You'll get it back to front. You'll pass out or collapse. The brain is so good at making sure you're safe at any cost. It doesn't care at any cost. If it doesn't care if you're healthy or happy, it certainly doesn't care whether or not you stand on a stage speaking. That is a no-no. If it nearly killed you once, it's probably going to kill you if we ever let you there again. So the way around this is gradual exposure. You don't rock up one day and talk to 1,000 people. You talk to a small group of friends. And then, for example, a lot of my clients are personal trainers. Some of them have gone on to run their own events where 10 minutes previously, where they would stand up in front of a group and tell me that they were 2 or 3 out of 10 on the scale of actually standing there and feeling nervous. Within 10 minutes, you can have a massive impact on that fear by anchoring a state of confidence. Because when you understand the only reason we feel terrified is because we keep running movies of what's going wrong. For many people, they have never actually spoken in public, yet have a fear of public speaking. So think about that. If you've actually never experienced public speaking, how can you have a fear of it? Something to consider. So the negativity bias, the little friend of the nervous system, the chatter in the mind, your inner critic, if you will. Situations that cause us pain and suffering lead to rapid learning. I mean rapid, instantly. We don't go there again. We avoid that at all costs. What hurt us once is now met with resistance through fear of repeat situations. But be careful what you feed your mind and give attention to, because the big problem that a lot of my clients have had is instead of actively focusing and diverting their conscious attention to the thing that they do want, they are angry at the thing that they currently have and are desperate to get rid of. And I'm sure you can see that is the complete opposite direction of where the focus should go in order to change. I call it the difference between watering weeds and growing flowers. Weeds grow quick enough without you looking after them, never mind watering them. So language is a huge part of life as a human. We think, communicate, and learn through language. And these words have power. The power of language can be best explained with the placebo and the nocebo effects. So the placebo effect, originally realized by Henry Beecher, I believe was a field surgeon, a medic in the Second World War. He was treating people with obviously serious injuries and eventually ran out of his supplies of morphine. So he decided to lie to people and give them a saline solution, sugar. And what he later found is that the placebo was 70% as effective as morphine was on the battlefield for people that were in absolute agony. So 70% of the time, a nothing was as powerful as one of our most powerful analgesics. Now, I find that fascinating because I'm not interested in the drug or the research or the clinical studies. I'm interested in the cause, the mechanism. How on earth can a nothing, the equivalent of being given a Haribo, lead to those effects? It happens because you believe what you are being told by an authoritative figure to be true. and we access our own inner pharmacy cabinet accordingly. Because you've got all the good drugs inside. You don't need any of the outside stuff most of the time. Placebo is also 75% as effective as antidepressants are for depression. Now, also, the placebo is the gold standard for clinical trials in terms of random double-blind control studies, where not only don't the patients know what they're getting, but the practitioners giving them the pill. And the interesting thing here, if you look at the actual study, is unfortunately placebo comes under the branch of pseudoscience, mainly because it doesn't have an exact mechanism. If you have a car engine and take a significant chunk or component out of it and it doesn't work, and then you place it back in and it does, you've just done some science in terms of cause and effect. Manipulating a variable to see the outcome so that you can reproduce it again and again and again. And as a blueprint, you have knowledge which can sit in the journals, and we call that science. So that anyone else can do the same thing and hopefully get exactly the same situational results across the board. But the placebo is very difficult. Many people are not even sure where the placebo starts and ends and where the actual design of the experiment starts and ends. And there's a reason for this. Is because a lot of it is based on the actual design. And we'll look at some of the studies of the placebo. One of them was sham acupuncture, where someone kind of would feel a pinprick on the skin, but nothing was actually pushed in. And I believe that around 40% of people in this that actually had no acupuncture at all, they thought they did, but they didn't. 40% of them reported some kind of alleviation for the pain or condition that they came in with. But then it gets interesting because there was an extra variable here. When the practitioner gave them more than a few minutes of instruction, hi, my name's so-and-so, you're here for XYZ, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, any questions, let me know. When they went into maybe a 15 to 20 minute consultation, to put the patient at ease, to answer any questions they had, were very warm towards them and comforting, the effect shot up to 68%. So it's not just the thing that you get, it's actually the suggestion of the person that gives it to you. And as I mentioned, the placebo is actually the gold standard of clinical intervention. Because if a placebo is that effective, unless an active agent can show superior effects to a placebo, you may as well get a nothing from your GP with the expressed intention that this will work wonders for you. Half of the time, that is what you get. Of any medication from the GP over the counter or the pharmacy is usually a placebo. So the insidious twin. By default, the placebo elevates state from the Latin I shall please. It's an increase in health, well-being, and alleviation of painful symptoms. And yet the nocebo is the opposite direction, i.e. we feel worse. However, ethics committees will not allow nocebo research. How would anyone agree to a situation or an experiment where people are actually made worse, given headaches, feel nauseous, they're throwing up? It doesn't kind of get through. So what they've got is a body of evidence that looks at the negative effects of being given a placebo. And there's a reason for this, is because the participant and the practitioner are unaware of what they've been given. The practitioner has to mention the possibility of side effects. Why? Because they could have well given them an active agent that on the box or the label would have a list of side effects. And now it gets interesting, because by expressing you may experience headaches, nausea, vomiting, etc. from this pill. Within mobile phone research that looked at the impact a phone would have on headaches from intermediate to severe, 64% of people in this study reported headaches, and yet none of the phones were real. They were an empty shell, a case. So the mere suggestion that you will probably experience a headache from using the phone led to the headaches. And in Alzheimer's research, this is a classic example of a nocebo, where people are given a placebo, i.e. an inert substance and nothing. And I believe around 60% of them experience some form of illness, headache, nausea. And because of this, it becomes so severe in some situations that there is a 10% dropout rate across the board in pretty much all Alzheimer's research, because the people cannot continue from how bad they feel, even though they have been given an inactive agent. So let's look at the nocebo and the placebo right down to its core elements. The suggestions of other people that you believe are true can physically impact your health and well-being, change your emotion, impact your biochemistry. So the big thing here is, if we look at this from the perspective of mindset and not just pharmacy, your own thoughts and spoken word can have an impact on you. But more importantly, if a physician can make you better or worse, what information are you letting into your brain from the outside world? Distraction, celebrity, entertainment, news, worry, social circles that play you down. So imagine someone that's desperate to lose weight, going into work and being met with the tune of, "Oh, Mary, not another diet, is it? How many is that this year? Is this one going to last 1 week or 2 weeks?" That's not a supportive environment. Now, if you're able to kind of bounce off of that situation, you'll probably make some progress. But by walking into that negativity, you can almost set yourself up for failure by believing that they are right. Who am I trying to kid? I've attempted to lose weight so many times, it hasn't worked. These guys are right. I'm just a failure. Be very, very aware of what you let into your brain. There are consequences. Because by default, we don't sit there bigging ourselves up, visualizing success, anchoring states of resourcefulness and confidence. The untrained mind will do a Tom and Jerry and disappear to the past and get angry and worry about this. And it will rush off to the future and literally freeze based on a fear. Am I good enough? Will it happen? Who am I to pull this off? It's never worked in the past. I can't do it. I'll try, but. And the language you use becomes the behaviors that you elicit. And that largely dictates your success in life, across the board, in health, in relationships, in anything you do. So skill acquisition. This is the second most important slide in any of my work that I do with clients, one-to-one, workshops, and various other things. Being an expert is why you are never present. It's also fatal. It's a great thing. Being an athlete, being a musician, being whatever it is you do. Mastery, people love to see it. They love to see people in a flow state and admire that excellence. So the red and the purple are not that important. These are things that we don't know that we don't know, and then we are aware that we don't know them, but we still don't do anything about it. We're interested in green and blue. So green would be your first driving lesson, your first attempt at learning a second language, your first piano lesson, your first whatever it is, something that you have never done previously. Therefore, up in your brain, you have no neural networks wired specifically so that you can produce the fine motor control relative to these tasks. And in blue, we have mastery, where you've done it for so many, driving a car after you've had a license for 5 years, making tea after you've done it 17,000 times, you know, a power clean in the gym when you've been lifting for years, compared to your first attempt where you nearly kind of, you know, knocked yourself out. There's a curve of learning for anything that you are not an expert at. You don't have to think about tying your shoelaces as an adult, but you did as a kid. And the thing here is to realize that you are not going to master it first time. babies fell over twice and said, well, walking's not for me. I'm just going to sit here. That's it. I've quit. Something very important with this slide. In the green, as a beginner, conscious competency dictates that the thing you are doing requires your full attention. Absolute, laser focused. And in the blue, when you are unconsciously competent, meaning that the neural hardware is in place, you don't have to think at all about the thing you're doing. Now, people can drive to work and not even know how they got there. We come down into the kitchen 4 times and we still don't get the thing that we came down for. Because in blue, your mind isn't required. You don't need to think about making a cup of tea. You've done it so many thousands of times. But the real danger here is unless you have trained your mind to some level. Now think about this. It takes 3 to 4 years to get a degree. The same time for a trade. And I would also say a similar time to become a regional, possibly a national level athlete. People dabble with their mind. Meditation session. Say, look, I know you've got this. You are unconsciously competent. I'm here if you need me. It's halfway through shopping lists, angry at exes, worried about the job interview next week, flashing up that beep, beep, beep because you haven't fixed the fence post in the garden or cleared out the garage and you said you would. You've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to, and this is why you cut your finger in the knife drawer when you're making tea. And then it gets a little bit serious because at least 700 people a year in America alone die by getting off the staircase and breaking their neck. These people aren't present. They're in a trance state. That up a notch, because not only can you cut your finger on the knife drawer by not paying attention to trying to grab a spoon to stir your tea, an ex, or worried about getting home from work tomorrow because there's going to be a road crash somewhere or a diversion or rush hour, whatever it is, at this moment and hijacked you. Really clip the saucepan with your elbow and scold the toddler that's scurrying around on the floor next to you. See how all of a sudden this can rapidly escalate into serious, serious problems. And the reason we're never present is because most of our life exists. We go to the same job. We eat similar food at similar times. When we go out, it's usually to the same places. We do the same things. We meet the same people. Your life is in green. Things that you do on a weekly basis that you are an absolute require your full attention. Because if you don't, I suggest you start that instrument and begin having lessons. Do your photography course. Learn that second language. With the opposite hand. Get dressed in a different way. Work. Because if you don't change it, it's as simple as that. Aware of the dangers of living in blue. Green becomes essential. The fact that there's 1.25 million crashes on our roads annually, with a hell of a lot of deaths. Big, colourful 10 feet long things with flashing lights, and you, even if you squint, you can still see them. They don't appear, we disappear. Looking out the window, we're thinking of this, thinking of that, and crash. When you are not present, you're actually there to live your life. You can't escape unless you've got a TARDIS. This moment. but your thoughts can go anywhere they please. Past timeline from when you were about 2 to 3 years old, some of your earliest memories, fantasy realm of everything that could happen and go wrong. And for that reason, we are there. Bad stuff comes bang on the door. Family death, car crash, illness. Hits the fan, whoosh. You are in the moment. And for a lot of people, they avoid being present because that's the only place that you can actually face the person in the mirror. Relationship to heal. Relationship where unconditional love, because if you can't love you, permission to either. And I believe this is either from or in line with some of Maslow's work. But it's very important to consider the repercussions of a life where everything that you do, you are such an expert at that your brain doesn't need to think. You probably find it difficult to meditate and have sleep issues. Isn't required to focus on the thing you're doing, absolutely on hyperspin, rushing everywhere else. Your eyes, it's still processing information. Okay, so beliefs. Think of beliefs as your operating system. So you've got your hardware, you've got your laptop or your desktop. You've also got your bones and muscles and your nervous system, your spinal cord, brain, etc. Beliefs. Your world map are best understood as your version of Windows or whatever it is on a Mac, Yosemite, X Sierra, whatever. Because when you're young, when you're an infant, rapidly gathering information to construct a world model. You work out what the world is about and your place in it. So we've got some sense of order and organization. And if you really want to track it back, this is the birth of Greek mythology. That route, we'll say that for another day, to bring understanding to that which we didn't have a clue about. So be careful what you think. Beliefs are largely concrete by around the age of 7 if you look at the developmental research. Yours? Influential people that were around you during those developmental years. Mum, dad, teacher, brother, sister, aunts, uncles, nan, granddad. And worst case scenario, if ever you were kind of 5 or 6 years old and stuck in front of EastEnders to keep you quiet, I'm sure you're well aware of the themes that have gone on in that program and potentially where your world map could have come from. You inherit their map, complete with the problems, the conditioning, the reactions, and the world views, unless they are challenged. We are born enough. We are born complete. We learn to be broken. We learn to be fragmented. We learn to be works in progress that place happiness in tomorrow, believe that love's conditional, and that once we've done this certain thing, way a certain way, got that degree, met this person, had 3 kids that are not spaced too far apart, because people will ask questions, when we've got that little perfect life, then we'll have arrived. And the danger there is you've been here all the time. The very act of looking for something that was never missing will keep you looking for the rest of your life. In this moment, it's extremely important to accept the fact that you are enough and always have been, that you are complete and not a work in progress. It's essential for mental health, for achieving your goals, for being present to your relationships, especially the one in the mirror. So fear. Fear is very real if now is a threat in some way. For example, if you opened your front door and our little friend standing there pulling this face, you would probably jump through the ceiling. But 99% of the time, the fear is in your head and not in your immediate environment. And that's the big one. Challenge it with 3 very simple words. Is this real? Fear is a very real thing if now is some form of situation that can cause harm, pain, or death. Someone pulls a knife on you in an alleyway. A bomb goes off somewhere. There's a car crash. You're up on the roof and all of a sudden the tiles begin to slip. There's a rapid change in terms of your autonomic nervous system. Sympathetic response, you are wired for fight, flight, or freeze. There's almost a gasp and a rush of adrenaline to get you ready to defend your life or run. But most of the time, the thing that you are actually worried about only ever exists as an image or a movie behind your eyes. Why does it hurt so much? If we go back to slide number 2 or 3, because your brain treats anything that you view as real. It has to. If you didn't react to the things that weren't real, you probably wouldn't react to the things that are real, and that could be fatal. When you challenge the thought, when you are aware of the fact that there is a huge discrepancy between what is in your mind and what can be seen with the eyes, you'll realize that now is a place of peace. I ask all my clients a loaded question, and I let them know beforehand, what's wrong with this moment? And instead of the knee-jerk return serve, I want you to really think about that question. What is wrong with this moment? Because most of you listening to this probably have a decent laptop, a computer, or a smartphone. You're probably in your own home with transport outside, food in the fridge freezer, clothes for all occasions. It's very easy to think there's problems when you allow the mind to go digging up stuff. Fear is only real if now is a threat, but stops so many people from living a full life because they worry, and they worry, and they worry. And what if? And what if someone says something? What if someone doesn't like it? And what if someone comments on these videos and said, Steve, that mindset's a load of rubbish? I couldn't give tuppence. Why? Because they don't pay my bills, they don't look after my kids. But with respect, they are entitled to their opinion. But their opinion isn't my reality. That's the difference. I learned years ago the difference between truth and opinion. I do what I do to help people move forwards. And if people don't like it, I'm fine with that. Because you will never get a vegan ordering steak in a restaurant. It's for everyone. And that's absolutely fine. But it would be wrong of me to hide away just in case someone chimed in and said, look at this idiot, what a load of rubbish. Because I realized long ago the difference between remaining silent because of the 10 people that might throw stones at you and actually showing up and doing your work because of the thousands of people that will benefit from it. That's my motivation, and it's simple. So fear, hopefully we've covered that and that makes sense. Most of the people that come to see me are fantastic at what they do, and there's a massive fear of getting themselves out there. You mentioned a live stream video, you see their eyes light up, not with excitement, but fear. I couldn't do that. What about some images, some posts, the blog? And they're terrified in case they get trolled or someone jumps in or what have you. But what people think about you not only is none of your business, but I'm not seeing anyone drop dead because of a thought. It's as simple as that. And the big thing within a piece is people can't steal it. You have to surrender. You are in control until you let go. Remember that. So where does your time go? Do you focus on what is wrong and how to get rid of it, or what you actually want? Because I used to work quite a lot with clients looking at fat loss, various degrees of obesity, several kilos overweight, several stone overweight. And I'm quite blunt. I'm not here to impress anyone or sugarcoat life. I'm honest, and I think people appreciate that. And I say to them, look, how much of your time has been spent being angry that you're fat? How much of your time has been spent sick and tired going to your GP for pills and potions and other pills and potions that now mask the side effect of the first lot because you're overweight and struggling with your health? And when you view the future, do you see yourself as not being able to change this and that debilitating downward slope of potentially being on a stick, crutches, or a mobility scooter? And they'll start to nod and they'll say, wow, you can look inside my head. And I'll say, you honestly tell me how much of what I just said focused on health or even close to it. Not a single bit. Until you change your channel, because you don't hear death metal on Classic FM, until you change your channel and actively focus on the thing you want, no amount of focus on being angry at what you have ever changes it, because you are immersed in the problem state instead of looking for solutions. So what movies are on repeat in your mind? The big one for the past is, who do you have to forgive in order to move forwards? Because forgiveness is never about them. Oh, they may have hurt you. You may not have deserved it and feel bad. But forgiveness is really observing who's holding the hot coal and suffering. It's not them, it's you. The day you forgive is the day you set yourself free. What stories do you reinforce with action that cause pain? Or inversely, inaction that allows opportunities to pass, or procrastination to become a default path? Because the big thing now is, thinking is usually a catalyst because we've got choices and we're not sure which one. So we'll go with A and off we go. But now we think about thinking about what other people might say or do if we do the thing that we're currently thinking about doing. I.e., I'd like to, but therefore I won't. And we stay stuck. And we end up living in our heads instead of out there in the real world. And this becomes a real problem for people, because the tighter that comfort zone gets, the more you struggle for breath. And eventually, the only thing left is fear. So being present to now. This moment is the only place you can ever be happy, feel love, be present, be creative, or actually change your life. It doesn't happen yesterday, and it certainly doesn't happen tomorrow. There's a fantastic pub in the Lake District in England. Free drinks tomorrow. But when you come back tomorrow, it still says free drinks tomorrow. So have you placed happiness in tomorrow? Will you only be able to enjoy life when the scales say a certain number, or you look a certain way, or those jeans fit? Or when you've got that degree, or met that person, or you've got the house, or you've done this or done that? Because if you're not happy with what you've got now, which is basically all you turned up with, plus a ton of clutter and distraction that you've added over time, you will probably never be happy with anything, because you are looking outside in order to fix stuff that doesn't have an outside origin. It's an inside job. So why we suffer? A little kind of rundown. We suffer because your brain is hardwired for survival. In order to assist this survival, we have an extremely powerful negativity bias. Your brain has no interest in what your favorite ice cream is, but it knows not to walk across a motorway with your eyes closed, swim with sharks, or eat toadstools. It will pay big attention and move from things that can be fatal, life-threatening, or even mildly discomfortable. There's an inner critic that safeguards you from change, in line with the negativity bias that's wired for survival. Because of this, the content that is viewed in the mind is treated as real, because if it wasn't, and was, if you know what I mean, it could be the end of us. How we feel is largely based on what we think. So emotion can largely be switched on from 4 things: what you think, what you say, what you see, and what you hear. 2 of them come from you, and 2 of them are from the outside world and come in, i.e. what you observe or what you hear from other people. Because emotion is always an effect and always has a cause and origin. Something happened and there's a trigger which is responsible for how you now feel. Most of the time we are reacting to mind rather than real events. For example, fear. Most of our suffering can only happen in the now, but comes from past and future. Bad content will make you feel bad. Why dig up the past and suffer when you have had so many good experiences, so many successes, so many pictures on your phone of holidays, the birth of your children, buying a house, graduating? What's stopping you going back and viewing that as default content instead of what went wrong? We make decisions from fear and doubt because the critic pushes away change. Well, you haven't got a track record of this, therefore it's not happening. We get angry at not living our potential. Many people choose employment over passion. We are desperate to change and have no idea how, because we look outside to fix problems that exist in the mind. As I mentioned earlier, almost all of your suffering comes from thinking. And when you are aware of this, you move from victim to observer. The observer understands cause and effect, suffering, reaction, habits, conditioning, the unconscious nature of our knee-jerk, hardwired default responses under stress, and pauses life and asks, how does this end so that I do not suffer? And it creates an alternate door, options, choices, inaction. Constantly chasing happiness stops us being fully present and happy. The day you set foot on a path to find happiness is the day you confirm you are miserable now and probably always will be, because happiness doesn't exist in the future or in things or experience. It's a way of traveling, it's the journey itself and not the destination. The pathway to change is awareness, an awareness of everything that I've just spoken about. You can only change that which you are aware of. Without awareness, you get angry at how you feel and ask why it happened, never looking at the timeline sequence of very specific events that led to how you now feel. So, conclusions. Inner peace is the most important journey you will ever make. For some of you, it takes weeks, months, maybe years. And that's okay, because time is all you have. Let's be honest. However many years you have left, you have time, and you know you have time because you're alive now. And if you're alive now, you can change the end of your story. It's going to take effort. There's going to be resistance. You may get angry, you may hate on life, and you may want to throw all your toys out the pram and quit. But I cannot emphasize how important it is to at least do the foundation work on your mind. Because if it isn't working for you, it's working against you, reacting as it did hundreds of thousands of years ago to keep you safe, to limit your potential, and to convince you that you're not enough. When you understand your mind, you are no longer the reactive victim to it. You move to conscious choices from the prefrontal cortex. You are in control. You think before you speak and before you react. You stop placing yourself at the center of the universe and taking things personally, because the world doesn't happen to you. It happens. And your choices are to leave it where it is in time and space, or pick it up and ask, why me? Why me is simply because you picked it up. It's that simple. So, homework. Accept responsibility for your entire life right now. As difficult as this is, depending on the severity of the things that have happened to you. Now, we've all got a timeline. We've all had bumps in the road. I get that. But the you that exists right now in this second has choices. In this moment, you can drop your bags. You can forgive. You can accept the apology you never got. Because by keeping these wounds open, the only person that hurts is you. Realize that you are enough and always have been. Print out I am enough and plaster it around your house. Because when your unconscious sees it again and again and again and again, the belief that you are currently not enough gets overwritten. Why? Exposure. Learn to meditate. Join a group, find a class, hire an expert. There's nothing to gain with meditation. It's a goalless pursuit. There's nothing to add because nothing was missing. Meditation is the gateway to inner peace, because the answers come from stillness and silence. And for a head that never stops, this is why we suffer. Work out what you want from life. Have you chosen safety over fun, over following your dreams? Do you hide away? Is there doubt? Is there fear? Are you an expert in something that you'd really like to make a go of, but, oh, I couldn't just in case? Because the longer you live out of line with your purpose, the more you'll suffer. Plan how you are going to impact the world with your unique gifts and talents as you follow your excitement. I cannot emphasize how important it is for you to train your mind, to realize everything that I've gone through in terms of its impact, language, thoughts, fear. Learn to meditate, skill acquisition, awareness. Because what happens during personal development is your path appears. Many people have no idea why they are here and their purpose isn't on the radar yet. And there's a very good reason for that. Your purpose only appears when you are ready to put those shoes on and walk it. Imagine a coach, an individual, imagine someone that is absolutely at war with themselves and angry at the world, becoming a coach to inspire people to change. They're going to create absolute destruction and chaos. When you are ready, the path appears. I cannot emphasize this enough. So for those of you that are watching this live, what I have is a video conference call Q&A for the people that are in my group. So this is currently being streamed to 5 locations. So it'll be difficult to get around all the questions on the actual video itself. Within about 10 minutes, I'll be doing a video conference call of any questions people have got on the content itself or any additional things on mindset. Could be meditation, could be a question about neuroplasticity. It could be something that they've read or seen or heard and they want clarity on that. The Facebook group is the Inner Peace Project. Go over to there now, request access, because that is the only place that the video conference call will kick off in about 10 minutes. And instead of typing, you will actually see me and I'll see you, and there'll be a group of us, and you can actually ask questions in real time. If you've got any questions and you can't make the call, feel free to email me, steve@thestrengthacademy.com. Also, if you would like to get the user manual for your mind, if you've enjoyed the content, consider this as the taster, a sniff of the menu, if you will, of what really exists in terms of powerful content that teaches you to become independent. Then add me on Facebook and send me a message, because I've got courses kicking off in a few weeks, workshops and consultations. I've helped people quit cocaine, come off of antidepressants, lose 30 pounds in 6 weeks, quit their job, open businesses, emigrate, sleep properly after 4 years of 3 to 4 hours a night. Anything is possible when you work out the mechanisms that have been responsible for your pain and are willing to work through them. So jump into the Inner Peace Project free group on Facebook. I will place the Zoom link there in a few minutes, and then I'll jump in and I'll be there for about 30 minutes for a Q&A on any of the content that's been covered today or anything additional regarding mindset. Thank you very much for your time.